God Morgan, happy Freyja's Day to you. I hope this week has been amazing, and I very much look forward to a weekend of recovery, healing, and growth. Today is the last day of the recognition of an awareness for all of our sisters and children who have not returned home, and the missing and murdered indigenous women and girls. Following the lead with the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, we are honored to be counted among those who have attended their week-long awareness webinar and really brought to the forefront the many different aspects of this terrible, terrible crime. So join me in supporting, of course, the MMIW all around the world, and that we pray that our sisters and the children will be returned home. So I pray for those who have suffered the loss, who have had to endure life without answers. I also lift up in prayer those who have gone on to the spiritual realm. Help us to come find you. We wish to provide closure for those who are still here. And finally, for those out there who contemplate doing this type of thing to another one of the Creator's creatures, I pray that this light shine into your heart, and that you wipe away those negative influences, and instead of enacting this terrible crime, that you would stand up and protect those who need to be protected. So I pray for you. As always, this morning, for those of you who haven't had the chance, like, follow, subscribe, mash the follow button so that you get notifications on any of the above platform or below platforms, I should say, YouTube, Facebook, or TikTok. Today, our live chat, of course, being available on Facebook. So check us out there. If you have a question, by all means, put it in the chat. For those of you who are more audio, this podcast and all of the shows before it are available in audio format on wherever you get your podcasts. So just ask for the Alaska Uv Hefnar, and there you will be able to download and listen to our shows each and every day. I also want to give a huge shout out To my family and friends at New Reality TV, I pray that you can visit newrealitytv.com, and there you'll find this plethora of perspectives that can help you with your spiritual journey, that you may come to obtain or maintain your mental space. I also want to give a momentary shout out for those of you who may have some extra coins, want to put them to good use. Feel free to stop by our tip jar, drop them in, and we will use them to further this message, to actually get further out there, and hopefully get this message in front of those who need to hear this. And finally, I ask that you just take a look at my website, of course, at norsewhispers.com. There you can find a plethora of information about me, my coaching, being Norse, being a Celtic Norse, and certainly all of our shows, all of our television programs, and all of my endeavors here in the state and throughout the world. So be sure to check that out, norsewhispers.com. Today we're talking about Freyja, and we're talking about the magical energy, of course, that Freyja brought to the 9 realms. One of the things we know, just based on some of the sagas, is the endless war that was going on between the Vanir and the Asir. The Asir being more of a warriorist tribe, the Vanir being more of an agricultural type of tribe, very much represented in human nature, as that we had the hunter-gatherers and then the agriculturalists, very much the same way. These two tribes were at war for many eons, until there was a peace reached, and as part of that peace agreement, some of the gods from the Vanir tribe would live in Asgard, and some of the gods from Asgard would live with the Vanir. This arrangement allowed for a peace to exist between the two tribes. So then the Asir would go on to fight their battles against the giants, for sure, and certainly we see the elimination of the frost giants. Along the way, we see this conversion of the supreme Asir god, and he would go on to become more wise. He would seek out wisdom and peace, and of course Wotan would go on to become a very benevolent chieftain in charge of the Asir tribe. So we see that growth. Now, Freyja was one of the gods and goddesses that were exchanged during this peace treaty, and she would go and reside in Asgard. Well, one of the things that she would take with her, of course, is her knowledge of magic. Magic, of course, is simply the manipulation of energy here on the physical realm. So she took this understanding of energy management to the Asir, where she would teach Wotan, of course, magic, Seether magic to be exact, and explain how that all worked. Wotan, we know, would go on to discover the magic of the runes, and he would go on to discover very much quite a bit of magic himself. Now, in Norse knowledge, as we read many other documentation sources, we see quite frequently that most often than not, magic, particularly used here on the physical realm, was handled by vulvas, and these vulvas were endowed with a Seether magic. Now, for those of you not familiar with the Norse understanding of magic, there were really two forms of magic here on the physical realm. The first being Seether magic, and Seether magic means or is the casting of a direction and the collection of energies provided by other spiritual entities. So there are other spirits, whether those be in the trees, in the grasses, in the mountains, in the air, in the animals close by, in other magicians, and in the landvati, or the spirits of the land, would come alongside and provide their energy to the enchanted spell, bringing it to fruition. This is Seether magic. Now, the other level of magic, according to the Norse, was Spakkraft. Spakkraft magic was that magic where the magician possessed all the energy themselves. They could conjure up enough energy to bring things, to manifest them single-handedly. They didn't rely on any other spiritual entity or any other energy source. They were kind of a package deal. They would be able to generate the energy, focus the energy, and manifest things on the physical realm. Now, these were the two major forms of magic, particularly here on Midgard. Now, we see an alteration in the writings. In much of the writings we see where we have this thing called Galdr magic. And Galdr magic, of course, meaning one or more magicians focusing their energy on a singular manifestation. Galdr magic would also include those sounds produced that were pleasing to the ear. These two kind of defining moments, or defining pieces, made something a Galdr type of event. So essentially we see multiple Seether magicians gathering together to produce a more powerful energy stream for manifestation, and certainly for safety and all types of different necessary spells, necessary energy. Now, science talks about this in a way that is a little less woo and a lot more real. Science says that magic is simply the movement of energy in the universe. The universe, of course, comprised of just this multitude of energy generated by a multitude of things. Now, in you, as an example, a standard 150-pound person has 6.5 octillion atoms that comprise the human form, the physical human form. These atoms all have energy. They have three forms of energy. We've talked about this before, where the proton and the neuron form this thing called the physical form, or the nucleus in the atomic structure. We also see in that same space we have an additional factor, and this is the electron. And the electron, of course, representing the spiritual realm, which is how these two realms kind of coexist, interlaced together. So they're all part and parcel, one kind of thing, right? And so we have the physical form, which contains both our physical sensory input and our physical senses, and our emotional state and our emotional state management is in the proton neuron. And then, of course, the spiritual realm, when all of what the spiritual realm is included in the electron. This is how the spiritual realm and the physical realm coexist in the same time and space. Now, to that point, we know that the spiritual realm doesn't really measure anything in time. Why? Because most often than not, you have to remember when we leave our physical form and we ascend into this spiritual realm, we no longer use sensory input. Our eyes, ears, mouth, nose, touch doesn't work anymore. We've been disconnected from this physical form. So now the world is dark, or as one of my spiritual entities in whom I communicate always says, not light. So, but what we have is, as we ascend into the spiritual realm, is we have our memories created by our interpretation of the experiences that we had when we were in this physical form. These memories are then provided or connected then to the spiritual entity, or the electron, that then stores it the same way our physical form does. So you can kind of think about our memory part of our brain as really this repository that's shared between our physical mind and our spiritual self. It's this kind of middle ground. This middle ground will go on to help our spiritual entity then broadcast this this interpretation of an experience to the spiritual realm, providing anyone who chooses to absorb the energy, it provides them with an even larger perspective of a particular experience, right? So we could learn more about how this event, this experience, is when we gain more perspectives of it. If we see it in a very limited view, we have a very limited understanding, versus as we begin to expand. And that's really what the spiritual mind is going to do for you as you're going through these experiences you call life, right? So very kind of interpretation of reality for our spiritual self. Now, many times, what many people don't understand is when we are experiencing life, we are seeing things, hearing things, smelling things, touching things, tasting things, all of these sensory inputs, as they arrive in the physical form, whether it be through the the auditory canal here, whether it be through your olfactory, whether it be through your optic nerve, whatever it may be, as this experience is had by the physical form, we find a conversion of this to energy, right? So it's bioenergy that's going to communicate across the optic nerve of the eye to produce this idea that, oh, wait a minute, this is all what we experienced. This is the vision, and then we'll have another set of experiences that are, oh, this is what we heard, oh, this is what we smelled. And so all of these energies are kind of compacted together as they go through the emotional filter that you have. Your emotional filter is based on the last present. So as we receive new energy through this emotional filter, the emotional filter changes it just a tad. And then it's going to release a signal to the heart to go ahead and release these hormones. I need this much of this and this much of that. So it's kind of giving the heart the recipe. The heart then releases these hormones into the bloodstream. The bloodstream then paddles all around the body, eventually winding up in the brain. Now, along the way, as these hormones are kind of being distributed through the body, they're going to be affected by the chemistry of your body. So we'll say your emotional filter said, all right, man, be sad. So we release those hormones into our bloodstream. But in the meantime, we've had some kind of mind-altering substance. Think of it. We had a few drinks. The alcohol now is in our blood, right? It's in the blood, so it's going to combine with this energy that we've released from the hormones, from the heart, and it's going to combine and mix all together, and then arrive at the heart, at the brain, convoluted, right? So we have the experience, the body's released chemistry, plus our ingested chemistry, i.e. alcohol. In this case, anything else works. Now the brain interprets this whole package and says, wow, that's weird, right? Because here's what I saw, and here's what I'm told to feel, or I'm informed to feel. And then this is all kind of bent and weird. It's kind of odd because, again, the alcohol is now construed this chemistry. So the body then says, all right, this is the memory, this is the experience that we had. And then we have one final gate to pass through. Now, I call this gate the me gate. Now, the me gate, for those of you who may have been in a situation where everything is telling us that we should be angry or we should be, but yet we choose to express love, sympathy, harmony, peace, whatever. We're choosing this other path. This is handled through what I call the me gate. The me gate exists between the emotional processor and the actual brain itself. Now, the brain itself is simply there to now store this experience in our memories, right? That's what the brain is going to do. So this me gate, located just before we get to that point, can now alter the energy, can manipulate the already formed energy that's going through the brain before it's actually stored as an experience. Okay? This is what creates a lot of issues with many memories, right? Why? Because we may remember them to be maybe not so happy, whatever the case, because of all this chemistry that we had in our body and the way our mind was set. Remember, our emotional filters are set by the last present, not the current one. So maybe in that present, we were joyful, or we were sad, or we were angry. The emotional filters are set present by present, and they can change one extreme to the other. They can go the distance. Now, part of what's going to happen when this emotional filter sends the release for the hormones come back, they set our brain. When that happens, the first thing the brain is going to do is it's going to set these emotional filters for the future, right? So we've looked at the past. We've built the energy, however that's structured, and now we're going to set our emotional filter for the future. One of the other things that's going to happen while this is occurring, while we're setting that emotional filter, is that we're also going to set the border of our aura. Our aura, of course, is that space around us that many times provides our interface, our physical interface to the spiritual realm. It allows us to communicate. Again, there are two parts to the aura: the cloudy, or the inner part that we're kind of sitting in the middle of, which is kind of based, the clarity of that area is usually defined by our mental processing. How much mental stuff are we doing? How much thinking are we doing, right? If we're really high energy, we're really thinking about a whole bunch of things, got a lot of things going on in our lives. This, of course, makes this area within our aura very cloudy. The emotional filter, as it's being adjusted, is going to set the border of the aura. It's some frequency that matches our emotional state. So if we're calm and we're peaceful and we're content and we're comfortable, our aura border is nice and kind of even and low, very akin to watching the swells in the ocean, how they just kind of rise and settle and rise and settle. It's very akin to that. Versus when we are feeling very high energy in our heart, whether that be anger, whether that be joy, whether that be whatever, this frequency then gets really high, and it looks more like a heartbeat now, right? Up, down, up, down, up, down, right? And so it makes it very difficult for other people's auras to interface with us, right? Now, there are certain energies, extreme joy as an example, which has what I call the dual wave. And this is where you have this extremity. It's very high energy, it's very high powered, but it's in a cyclic manner at which others are actually drawn to it. So other auras around us see this state and kind of say, "Oh, I want to be part of that." And so it's kind of like a magnet to other auras. So we find that people love being a part of something joyful. Today we're talking about magic, and we're talking about the manipulation of energy. I think the biggest thing that I hope that you take away from today is the fact that you're in charge. You are the one who, remember, of course, we start with our understanding of the me gate. We always have control of the me gate. We may not think so. We may surrender it. We may go, "Oh no," but we have control of the me gate. So when all the energy and maybe even the chemistry is coming back to us and saying, "Hey, we should be sad," we can use our me gate to say, "No, I don't want to be sad. I'm going to create this other energy, and I'm going to go this other path." We have that choice. Now, again, there are many, many, many different ways to alter the chemistry of the body, and to alter that when that chemistry arrives back at the brain, for the brain to interpret its signal and to certainly to misunderstand. This is why many people struggle with emotional control, particularly if you're adding this mind-altering chemistry to our physical form. Now, in modern day, unfortunately, the reality is when we kind of ingest a lot of pre-processed foods and the like, the chemistry is not natural, right? It is what it is, right? So it alters us in very much the same way. If we look back millions of years, maybe not millions, maybe hundreds of thousands, as we see individuals migrating out of Africa, we all started the same way. All these human physical forms have all started the same way. We started with this process of evolution that would then span out over the world. And what we find is that we had a multitude of differences with peoples as they moved around the world because of their diet, because of what they were eating. This chemistry that they were creating within their physical form allowed for different biological and certainly neurological processes to occur, making them all different. This is why we have so many beautiful blessings of peoples throughout the world. It's the chemistry difference, and it can change us. It is the fundamental tool at which to change our DNA. And we can alter that. That makes the release of those hormones are going to then be different, right? So all of these pieces is what makes you absolutely the most unique item you can wrap your mind around, because you are the only one in all of the history of humankind that has ever been or ever will be. You're the only one who interprets the way you do. Therefore, that interpretation that you're providing is different than everyone else's, but yet adds a perspective to the way I see the world, right? Because you're going to tell me about your the way you see this, that experience comes into my brain, and now I can include that in my perspectives. So that's really the benefit of your unique interpretation. It's really a godsend. My friends, I wish you the very best of Freyja's day today. I hope that you use the energy, you draw it all back, you heal yourself. Start there. Obtain and maintain your mental space so that you find yourself joyful, harmonious, peaceful, content, right? And growing in the right direction. I also encourage you to think about our ancestors, those ancestors that we've lost. I ask that you pray for them as you would pray for yourself. I ask that you help us to find closure and or complete the circle for these many, many, many women and children who have disappeared. We ask that you help us to bring them home and to find peace for their loved ones and for them. I wish you the very best again. I wish you the very best Freyja's Day. For those of you who haven't had a chance, please like, follow, subscribe. Hit us up wherever you are. If you do have a question, be sure to hit up my webpage, norsewhispers.com. There you can pose a question, we can open a dialogue, and we can both learn and grow. So I hope that you will use that tool as well. I wish you the very best. Love and light, my friends. Until Mani's Day, and where we will see you again. Love and light.